All right,
I'm ready now.
6:30, I'm gonna call this study session, City Council to order on September 10th, 2024. We got two items on the agenda today. We got building code update, and then we have resident survey results. So throw it over to City Manager to kick off the building code updates.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of council. As the mayor said, our first item is an update of some building code items. Tim, our building official, has been with us now for
6 months.
6 months.
Got everything solved?
Got everything solved? No, but I can say that Tim's been out talking to contractors, talking with our neighboring cities, learning a lot about how things have worked here, and of course, studying our building code as some of the nuanced differences from others in the area. I'm real pleased that he has compiled just a list of modifications to our code that will make our code more consistent with others in the area. I think address some of the issues he's heard from contractors, and I think just put us a little further ahead there with our overall building operation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt and Tim for the presentation.
Yeah, I think that's basically everything that I was just gonna say, so, yeah, thanks, Jim. Tim, he's been here, I guess, 6 months now. I think this is the first time he's really had a chance to be in front of all of you, so.
Have some chocolate.
Real formal atmosphere.
Just keep your eye on him, okay?
We definitely want this to be a conversation, so if you guys have questions or thoughts and stuff comes up, feel free to ask away and we'll go from there, so let's get started.
All right. Do we want to go through the agenda?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go through the purpose and the background of our code amendments, the process by which we came to them, the proposed amendments, the staff analysis of those amendments, and some details regarding that, and then we'll take questions on it. So the purpose and the background of what I've been working on, what the whole department's been working on, is that we're adding clarification and consistency for our customers. We've got a lot of feedback from our inspection results and questions about our code. And this also is helping to align our code with the design the future work we've been doing. These are largely technical amendments to align with our industry standards and align with our neighboring jurisdictions. It's prepared by me and also my staff. We started this in early 24 when I came on. I first started reading the code. We incorporated feedback from homeowners, from contractors, and from responses to staff before I started. So I had a list when I got here. And we're ready for our study session in September. Obviously, we're here now. This also is going to help us create a framework for adopting the 2024 I-codes by getting rid of some of the clutter in the current codes. So I started the review of the amendments and the recommendations in April. Started in March here, but I needed a couple weeks to catch my breath. So reviewed it with Planning and Public Works for conflicts with the ULUC in May. We've edited a code and we provided that to you. We have reviewed staff recommendations and we have resolved ULUC conflicts. And now in our study session, the dates for the first and second reading have changed. Matt, what were the dates changed?
Yeah, I think first reading will be on that October 15th date, and the second one will be November 19th.
So let's go through some of these proposed amendments. There's not a ton, so this won't take too long.
Yeah, we apologize also for all of the words. So traditionally, we like to
Yes.
throw in a picture here, but it's technical amendment, so forgive us. We'll get through it.
So the International Residential Code came out in 2 printings. They rushed the first one out, and it was flawed. One of the problems was in the insulation tables, the 2018 code had options for continuous versus in-cavity insulation. It had different insulation values. They eliminated that in the 2021, simplified it, but then all of those times when a simple insulation option didn't work, they didn't have all of the different options for continuous, external, internal. And so they had a second printing to clarify that and give more options for the contractors, but nobody knew which version we adopted. So we're just clarifying that it's the second printing, not the first printing, that we are using. So just a clarification there. The International Swimming Pool and Spa Code and the Accessible Code was not formally adopted because they were references within the IBC and the IRC. But without actually telling anyone that, they didn't know where to go to get their code for swimming pool safety, signage, accessible buildings. Everyone went to ADA, which is it's a governing body and a standard, but not a code. And the ANSI is a far more robust code for accessibility, and that is actually what the IBC is based upon. So we are adopting those two codes and unamended. They're very small codes, but they're very important ones. And that's just gonna give everyone a reference to how we're inspecting in the field. Projects exempt from permit to align with industry standard. Detached accessory structures, playhouse, sheds, things of that nature, very small buildings. It doesn't matter how small they were, our code needed a permit for them. You could buy a playhouse at Costco, you'd need a permit to put it in in the yard. Well, maybe not a yard, this is for the IBC. But anything less than 120 square feet did not require a permit by the code. Fences less than 7 feet in height, we were asking for permits for every single fence. We don't even have a code to inspect fences. It's not even in our book. And retaining walls, less than.
Can I get my permit fee back?
Yeah, me too. Experienced our building code.
We were requiring permits for retaining walls, anything over 2 feet in height, but it's measured from the footing, and the footing's underground. And so once you got to 2 feet, you might have had a planter, right? And so the code says 4 feet. I mean, that's when we actually start to get some soil pressures behind it, right? So it's just, that aligns us with the code unamended, it aligns us with all of our neighboring jurisdictions, so that contractors have no confusion, and it really simplifies the process. Expiration, the way our code's written now, it was 1 year from the time the permit was issued with no extension without permission. But our software is designed, just as the code is written, 6 months from an initial issuance, and then a 6-month extension from every inspection, right? So that as long as you're getting your inspections, your permit doesn't expire. And so our software is designed just to do that automatically. Currently, we are chasing that expiration date. We're looking up every permit, figuring out when it was issued, and then manually expiring it after a year, regardless of whether they had inspections or not. But this makes it much simpler for our permit center. So we had a very robust roofing language for underlayment, and very small benefit with a huge cost to the consumer, right? So we have simplified the roofing language with one exception. Each type of roof, each type of underlayment, it said if you need ice and water shield, it will be installed. Well, we do need ice and water shield. We do have ice damming, and so we left in the amendment that says that you will install ice and water shield. But not all of the other language in the underlayment that the contractors weren't reading. We were having constant failed inspections, and it wasn't providing a benefit to the consumer, but it was doubling their roof cost and doubling our inspection time, because we were constantly going out and educating these contractors on a very specific Littleton roofing code. And it doesn't matter how great your underlayment is. It's the overlayment that gets damaged by hail every 12 to 15 years. The underlayment, like may last 30 years, you have to tear it off the deck anyways the moment the hail damages the shingles. So this was just an extra cost for our consumers. And we also, and this one I'll have to explain a little. We eliminated mid-roof inspection. So this is the inspection of the underlayment and the flashing before the shingles go on. It sounds like a very important inspection, and it can be, but there's a caveat here. I could walk on a roof for an hour and miss one fastener that wasn't covered, and that leak will come down and pop up somewhere else 20 feet away. Well, the homeowner calls their roofer, says, I have a roof leak. And the roofer won't honor his own warranty because he says, the building inspector passed my inspections, right? So I modeled it based upon the Pikes Peak Regional Building Group. It's 1 million residents. They do 60 to 80,000 roofs a year with no mid-roof inspections and absolutely no callback, right? We check ice and water shield at the edges. At the final, we check the caps on the flues. We check our plumbing vents, right? And if there is an issue, because the underlayment had a problem, there's a builder's warranty on every single roof. It now goes back to the installer, and they're not calling us because we did the inspection on it. So it saves liability for the city. It saves inspection time. Roofs can be started and finished in a single day. The contractors love it. So we haven't gotten any blowback on that one at all.
Experience this also.
Aren't roofs usually done in a day?
Not if they have a mid-roof inspection.
That's what I was
I'm
told.
loving you right now. Wonderful.
So again, with the IRC, we edited the work exempt from permit to include decks under certain thresholds. So if you have a deck that is under 200 square feet, it is under 30 inches from the ground, it is not serving your main entrance, doesn't require permits. You want to build that little deck in your backyard with grandpa on the weekend, doesn't require a permit. Once you get over 200 square feet, once you get above 30 inches, which requires a guardrail, once you're serving your main entrance, now we need to look at it, right? Because now it becomes important. So there are many decks that we were asking for permits on, and we were getting a lot of blowback for that from our homeowners. So this aligns.
So excited about that one.
Standard.
Huh? So excited about that one. We gonna have a deck party soon? No. Not on the current decks.
So we had a very complicated design criteria, so that's gonna be wind speed, snow loads, right? We had 3 different wind speeds depending on where in the city you were, right? We're splitting on Federal, we're splitting on Broadway, no one knew what wind speed they had to design to, and we had 3 different snow loads, all within the same city. So we have just taken the highest values at 140 mile an hour wind speed and 38 pounds per square foot snow load and made that the standard, right? One value, the table just got a whole lot simpler. That is something that everyone has to look up depending on the jurisdiction they're in, but now they don't have to figure out what part of the jurisdiction they're in, just which city they're getting their permit through.
Is
So-
that comparable, the wind speed and snow load, is that comparable to our neighboring jurisdictions, or where are they at? Because I can see, I mean, I'm looking for things that will ultimately increase costs and stuff like that, especially for new builds, and just wanna kinda get some sense of comparability between the neighbors.
So we're at 140 miles an hour wind speed. Our neighbors, as you go east, it drops to 130 or down to 115. As you get closer to the front range, you're gonna go up, but you don't go above 140.
Okay.
And so we're kind of floating right on that, the division between, the plains and the mountains. So we just took that higher wind speed because we have trail mark, which was sitting in that higher wind speed.
Gotcha, okay.
And then the 38 pounds per square foot snow load is actually less than southern jurisdictions.
Yeah,
Which are,
okay.
get a lot more snow, even at the same elevations. But that's the highest that we were calling for in our gust map and in our snow map, so. There was an amendment that removed the requirements for fire sprinklers in townhouses. Now, I kind of think that maybe it was an error or a mistranslation, but the fact is, the fire department requires them. So,
I don't know if it was it an error? I don't think it was. No, I think that was intentional about, well, we were gonna,
Years ago.
yeah.
so
Glad
the
you brought
fire
it up.
department was requiring it anyways. So it kind of made it null and void, right?
I
But,
didn't think so. I thought we had that session with the fire people here.
I think this is pre
Fire, you want the whole
Jen.
thing to be.
exactly. So.
I just sold a townhouse this week and there's no sprinklers, and the inspection, they were like, why would there not be sprinklers?
Well, I think that the rationale was, we control the fire code in Littleton, the fire department can say what they want, but it's still our code. And I think that's where the difference was. I mean, this sounds good, I'm not arguing with it, but.
So, in consultations with the fire chief, he was asking me actually just a couple weeks ago whether we even knew that was in there, and I told him we had already addressed it. Because we have a large townhouse project coming up. They want sprinklers in it, and we want sprinklers in it as well. When you have attached multifamily homes, you can't control what your neighbor's doing, right? Now, detached, single family, we don't require. But when we have attached multifamily, we have to protect the neighbors from each other, because one goes, they all go. Even with all the fire protection, that just gives you time to get out. It doesn't stop the fire from consuming the entire building. Right? Well, depending on how fast they respond. So this is going to require.
Of course, our fire department would stop it, but everybody else's,
Of
you never
course.
know.
Of course. So this is gonna require fire sprinklers in townhomes. That's gonna align with how the fire department is looking at it now. So we had enlarged solar setbacks.
Does that mean, excuse me, does that mean that they have to retrofit if they're not in compliance?
No, this is for new structures
New,
only.
Sorry, I'm gonna hang on this just for a second, just in terms of like cost and affordability and stuff like that, as well as the insurance implications. You know, I've seen plenty of new townhomes even here that have had them because obviously that's what the builders and the property owners actually wanted, despite our code, you know, allowing for it not to be installed. Do you have, or do we have like a good understanding of what kind of average cost is for a townhome installing these? Like it's,
I can tell you that.
I thought it
okay.
was like $2,000 or something really high.
It's more than that, right?
Like
So
20.
there's already a fire riser connection, even if there wasn't
Right.
sprinklers, right? So the fire department can come and connect and there's no fire hydrant, right? They have a connection right on the building. So the fire riser's already there. They have the supply. The extra cost to actually add the sprinklers, all the piping, and all those, you know, fire permits, it's about $30K for a 4-unit townhome. So that's split 4 ways.
Okay.
It's not huge when you look at the cost of these townhomes.
Well, as I recall from our conversation a couple of years ago, you had raised the insurance costs of
Yeah, you
of
save
that.
on insurance, you know.
If you have sprinklers.
Yeah.
It does reduce your
No, I
insurance
thought
costs.
you said there was a lot of water damage that was being
No.
reported.
No, I thought
With
if you
units
let
like
your
that.
insurance carrier know you have a sprinkler system.
They lower it down.
Single-family homes insurance can go up with fire sprinklers because once they don't get maintained like commercial fire sprinklers, they don't get inspected annually. And so that insurance cost can go up with a single-family home because that ruins a lot of things. The insurance has to pay for
Yeah,
all your
that's
property.
what I remember us talking about.
But on a commercial structure, on a multifamily structure, you get annual inspections.
So the HOA would operate that or something?
Yeah, and mostly they're checking the fire equipment. These are dry systems. They're not full of water all the time. They have a diaphragm that's controlled by compressed air. And it's only when the alarm goes off that releases the diaphragm that the system is charged, right? So it's not pipes full of water hanging over your home until your alarm system actually triggers that.
I'm just thinking of how often our fire alarm accidentally goes off too. It wouldn't be like someone just burned something on the stove and everyone's.
Well, you have smoke alarms, then you have a fire alarm, and you have heat sensors. It's the heat sensor that actually triggers those sprinklers.
Who burns food in your house, Andrew?
Protest too much.
No, I'm sure it's not her.
And for the projects that are already, I guess, in that planning and development stage, because we are changing this and this does add a significant, you know, increase, enough of an increase, not super significant, but enough of an increase. Do you see this kind of disrupting projects we've got in the planning process already, or are they kind of already moving in this direction
Yeah.
regardless?
It's actually us not requiring those is pretty unusual. Most jurisdictions do require them, most fire districts do require them, so
Okay.
I would say the majority of townhouses that were coming in had already planned on that
Okay.
as a cost.
Yeah, Toll Brothers had already budgeted for it.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
want them. I mean, it's a
Yeah, I mean,
Helps
there's
them sell
obviously a
units.
safety concern, I just trying to think about the ramifications of when it's being changed and why kind
I
of
don't
thing.
think we're anything unusual compared to our neighbors or anything like that. Everybody's required. So, builders expect it.
Solar setbacks. So we have an amendment that increased solar setbacks from 18 inches to 36 inches for access on the roof. But the fire department only needs one 36-inch path and then 18 inches everywhere else. By reverting to the code without an amendment, it increases the amount of the roof that we can put solar panels on, which is gonna align us with our sustainability initiatives as well. And it's gonna stop the constant reviews of these solar projects and denying them because they didn't read our code and do the extra large setbacks. So we're just reverting that back to standard.
And is that on all structure? Is it residential, commercial? Doesn't
I think
matter.
that's in the IRC, or is that on all?
It's all structures.
It's all structures.
IBC and IRC. Now, we want to add an amendment to the IPC, the plumbing code, because a lot of these TIs, these tenant improvements, these businesses moving in, they want a bottle filler, but they also need to meet accessible code. They need 2 drinking fountains, but they already have the plumbing for the 2 drinking fountains, but they don't want to add the 3rd plumbing. They want to add a bottle filler. So we'd like to allow the non-accessible drinking fountain to be a bottle filler. There's still a drinking fountain to use. We still meet accessibility requirements, but we can use the bottle filler as our non-accessible drinking fountain. So that'll please a lot of our TAs. There are bottle fillers with drinking fountains built in, but they're not as common and they're hard to get. And I don't know about you, I find drinking fountains a little unsanitary. Splash water in your mouth and letting it fall right back in, it's all over. Anyways, I prefer bottle fillers
Is
anyways.
there a criteria of like square footage or something that it has to meet for that commercial business to be able to have those 2 water fountains?
If a business, like a restaurant that provides,
Not restaurants, because I saw that exclusionary. I
Right.
meant like actual businesses.
yes, the per square foot, so it's every 200, after the first 1,000 square feet, every 200 square feet requires another drinking fountain. So once we start getting larger, you will get
But if
into,
you have less than 1,000 square feet, do you still have to have a public drinking fountain?
you still have to have 2 of them. 2 is the minimum, accessible and non-accessible. And that's if free water is not provided by the business. So we start getting into more drinking fountains like schools, large structures, after the first 1,000 square feet, it's every 2,000 square feet, we add another one.
Let's say I think it's-
Yeah, the other ones are the yellow, yeah.
I just think like with other businesses, like they don't meet that, small businesses, they don't have public drinking fountains, so.
Yeah, those were probably, a lot of them were constructed prior to the 22 or 21 code. And so,
Okay,
yeah, this is a
so
20,
this is for new.
this is new construction.
It's gonna be,
Okay,
TIs
got
for new construction. And then lastly, currently using the existing building code, if you have a rescue opening, as long as you replace that window with whatever the manufacturer provided that had the largest opening, you did not have to make that existing rescue opening meet current code. So basically, you had undersized emergency rescue openings, right? Now, maybe you're flipping a house and you just, swap in a window with the biggest opening you can get, but it's still under the minimum size. You have someone coming to purchase that home and they assume that you've met all current codes, but you actually have these undersized window wells, undersized rescue openings. So if you're changing out a rescue opening, or you're adding a bedroom that requires a rescue opening, we'd like to take out that exception in our code to make sure that we can get a full-size rescue opening in that window. Because that's gonna be a life safety concern, because some of these windows are actually pretty narrow and pretty small. And it's not a huge cost, and like I said, it is a safety concern. Because you don't have to go wider. Wider can get expensive, headers, framing, you can go taller. Taller doesn't require any framing, and you still get that square footage as long as you met the 20-inch minimum width, which is all it takes. So, and that's all. So, these amendments address consistent confusion and complaints that we've heard. It addresses the confusion with codes that are referenced but not formally adopted, and we're inspecting to because we have no other way to inspect pools and accessibility. It addresses conflicts with current ULUC and the proposed ULUC amendments. It also sets the framework for the adoption of the 2024 I codes by cleaning up some of this now, and we adopt the same style codes. We're doing our research on that now, and it aligns with the ESB recommendations related to sustainability. The proposed amendments to the roofing standards significantly save customers money. They have a negligent impact on roofing durability based upon dozens of interactions with contractors, homeowners, insurance company adjusters, homeowners associations, and the elimination of mid-roof inspection reduces city liability and shifts the responsibility to the contractor's warranty. This aligns with most large building jurisdictions in Colorado. In fact, it aligns with Pikes Peak Regional, which is the 13th largest building district in the country. I was with them for 5 years. So South Metro told us they have always required sprinklers in townhouse, so kind of made our city code amendment null. So this is going to align us with what fire wants right now. And it's also a life safety concern and property concern. And then again, while sections of the existing building code allowed for existing openings to be used as emergency rescue openings without enlargement, this creates a life safety issue for future owners who may not be informed of the exception when they purchase the residence. They assume that they have a rescue opening of the proper size. And this aligns the city's focus on life safety and consumer welfare.
So explain to me how this works. A buyer goes to the home and they assume it's up to code, but it's not, and that comes out in the inspection.
Doesn't come out in the inspection. So you've got someone who changed out all their windows in an older home. They've got rescue openings in the bedroom, say in a basement.
They're too small.
They're too small. They
Okay,
don't
so
meet
then-
the code,
They
right?
come out the permit process for replacement of the windows.
We eliminated that inspection. So, but if it deals with a rescue, it's in our handout. So, window changes, it's, we were spending half of our inspection time on mid-roofs and half our inspection time on windows. Windows is a YouTube video and a window from Home Depot. The flashing's intact. It's literally, you slide it in, a couple of screws and a tube of caulking and you've changed your window. Now, the caveat is if it's dealing with an entry door or it's dealing with a rescue opening, that still requires a permit. And so at that point, we make sure that we have the appropriate sized rescue opening because they touch it. If you don't touch something, you don't have to bring it to code. The moment you put your hands on it, it now needs to meet the
Well,
current
how is the
code.
buyer protected?
The buyer's protected because when that contractor changed out the rescue open, they had to pull a permit for that, and now they have to enlarge it to meet the current code.
What if they didn't touch it?
You don't touch it, I can't make people fix things that they don't address. I can only address the scope of work.
I adopted a deaf window, it's okay.
So it's just, that's what you get and that's what you have.
Until I go to re-permit it, when I dig out the window well and make it an
And then when you
accessible
do that, you
emergency
have to make
exit.
it the
Yep.
appropriate
Just
size.
put your smallest child in that.
Yeah, exactly.
She lives in the basement, I'm in the stairs.
Like Harry Potter.
Yes.
She got that.
My problem is I just can't fit out those little windows anymore. I could have, but not anymore.
So the removal of the enlarged solar setbacks, greater coverage aligns directly with the recommendations from our energy sustainability initiative.
This is a good change.
Now, this next one isn't an amendment, this is just something we're working on right now. In 2025, we plan to adopt the Green Building Code. Now, that's not gonna be for every building, but we're going to create a program with incentives. If you want to build to the Green Building Code, we could have expedited plan review, reduced permit costs to encourage a much greener building. It's a very expensive code to build to, right? But if someone chooses to do that, we can mitigate some of those costs and encourage them. So that's a program we're working on to adopt in 2025. So we're seeking support to bring this to council for approval. Do you guys have any other questions?
Questions?
I love it.
I think it was pretty straightforward, pretty clear.
I can't remember why we ended up, I know the townhome sprinkler discussion happened and why we ended up going the other direction. I
actually
cannot.
think it was the staff recommendation to help lower construction costs.
I think that's what happened. Yeah. Okay. Doesn't matter, in the past.
Great, well, thank you guys for your time, appreciate it very much.
Thank
Thank you guys.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for coming to our city. Appreciate it.
Alright, I'm still gonna call them egress windows.
They, rescue openings,
Rescue openings,
The
I
rescue
just got the, I had to go through the egress window process as well. I think I
any
hit all the
window-
highlights here.
Any window can be an egress window if you're egress.
I was gonna say,
Check your house.
when your house is on fire.
Where did you work before?
I worked I was the senior building inspector in Castle Rock for 2 years, and I was with Pikes Peak Regional Building Department for 5 years. I was a
Alright, we'll
commercial
take
contractor
a
in
short break as
California
people
for 20
walk away.
Oh.
As Gretchen just decides there's no.
No,
with
I've
tennis
done
it.
shoes
Ready?
did not work.
Let's do it.
Alright, so we got a grand finale presentation here, going out with a bang. We thought about having walk-up music and having you walk on up and everything, play you out.
Balloons coming down.
What would be your walk-up song?
But we got resident survey results here, and I'll
Let's get these
throw it to Jim so he can
Thanks.
I love that.
throw it to you.
Yes, this is Kelly's final presentation, and might save a comment for the end after we get through this business, but since 2012, the city's done this survey, and we've worked with effectively the same survey expert firm, Polco now named. And I'll just say, then I won't steal all of Kelly's thunder, but this, survey is useful to us in terms of guiding decisions as we have them throughout the year. I want to say, especially going into next year, as we are looking forward to council level discussions about potential service enhancements over the next few years due to some new retail that we have. I think this survey will harken back to it and use a lot of this data as we work through that process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly for the last time.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Council. I'm Kelly Nardi. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing and Events for the city for the next 72 hours. I'm pleased to provide you with the results of the 2024 resident survey. This is our 7th time. We began in 2012. It's a biannual survey. It started out with a company called the National Research Center. They merged with Polco. These two firms have conducted surveys for more than 500 communities across the country for the last 25 years. They are official partners of the National League of Cities and the International City and County Management Association. The survey is 160 pages long. It's right here in all its glory.
The survey results.
The survey results. The survey itself was 6 pages. If you would like a printed copy of this, let me know and we'll have Creative Services make one of
It is
those
in the
for you.
packet, though. The whole report is in your packet, so.
Old folks
So-
like printed copies, but I told Kelly, this old person doesn't need a printed copy of this.
Okay.
We'll have a parade for you.
This old person
So
does.
sorry.
Some of the data,
From in the-
what you're gonna hear about tonight is not from me, but from our consultant, Erin. It's kind of a high-level overview of the survey results. A couple of things that I always enjoy reading, because I do love this a lot. Appendix B on page 62 is the responses to open-ended questions, where people had an opportunity to say whatever they want, and they sure did.
Yep.
And Appendix C, the comparison of select survey results by respondent subgroups. That starts on page 73. This is a chance to really geek out on the data because it's really broken down into topics such as length of residency, which is more or less than 10 years, renter or home ownership, age, gender, household income, race and ethnicity, and city council district. For you council district folks, you might want to look at what your folks had to say. This year, we tried some new techniques to increase participation and representation. We also, for the first time ever, offered a Spanish language option. We only had 2 of those returned in Spanish. And in spite of increasing the numbers of surveys that were mailed out, postcards that were mailed out with a link to the survey. This is the first year people did not get a printed survey. They just got a postcard with a link to do it online. In spite of increasing the number of people who were randomly selected for that, our response rate is almost the same as it was in 2022. This is not unexpected, as Erin can probably confirm. It's a trend nationally, and in our case, I believe our residents are probably just suffering from survey fatigue because we have done so many surveys this year on a variety of topics.
Kelly, how much did we save going to online as opposed to print?
We did not save, it was more expensive
Oh,
because we sent more.
The
Postcards.
postage is the expensive thing.
So at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Erin Caldwell. She's joining us remotely from Santa Fe, New Mexico. She's a survey research principal with POCO, and she will now go over the results with you. Erin, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Oh. Can you hear me? Okay, I don't know why. I'm gonna ask again. Kelly, can you hear me? I don't see anybody's head nodding.
Because it's going to the speaker, the microphone and the speaker,
So
so I think
Peggy,
it's getting
how much did you increase the number you sent out from 22 to 24?
It went up to 6,400 from 5,000.
1,400 more.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 1,400 more, I think?
Yep.
All right, Erin, do you want to try now?
Yes, can you hear me now? I'm not seeing any. No? Sorry, I tried to test this beforehand and I could hear all of you. Uh, I'm going to stop sharing. Can you hear me when I'm not sharing? No, I don't think you can hear me. I am so sorry. I'm not sure why. Oh, you can hear me now? Okay, thank you. Phew. Hang on, I am so sorry. Let me share again and we'll get started. So once more, thumbs up if you can still hear me now that I'm sharing my screen. Very good, thank you. So I am happy to be here to present a summary of the findings from the 2024 Littleton Community Survey. But before I begin, on behalf of myself and my coworkers, I did want to thank Kelly. She was our primary contact throughout the survey development and implementation process and provided thoughtful and detailed feedback throughout the project. And then I also really need to acknowledge my coworker, Nicholas, who was the one who actually did the work for this project. I just get the privilege of being here to present the results to you. So this has been already touched on a little bit, but I just wanted to reiterate, as this is the 7th time that we've conducted a resident survey for Littleton. We did do that previously under the name of National Research Center, but I did want to emphasize we are still the same company. We just merged with POCO. We just have some new tools now that we didn't have before. And this was touched on a little bit too, but before we dive into the results, I did want to say that there are a number of ways these results can be used. Most commonly, local governments use these survey data for performance measurement with the opportunity to monitor trends in resident opinion over time and benchmark your results to results from other communities. And these results can also be used to inform budgeting processes, strategic plans, and other initiatives you may be considering. I'm going to start by giving a brief overview of the methods used to collect the opinion of Littleton residents. We kind of already talked about this a little bit, but all households within Littleton were eligible to participate in the survey. And we used a mailing list from the United States Postal Service delivery sequence file to randomly select 6,400 addresses to receive these invitations. They were first mailed in May of 2024, and then a few days later, a reminder invitation was mailed. The survey remained open for about 6 weeks. We received a total of 636 completed surveys, providing a response rate of 10%, and then a margin of error of plus or minus 4 percentage points. You're probably hearing a lot about margin of error right now with all the election polling, and I just want to emphasize this is just, we survey researchers like to recite the statistics because it's the one number we can calculate. And it just means that if we conducted this survey in the same way 100 times, 95 of those times we'd get a result that was in plus or minus 4 percentage points. However, there are other sources of error. And, we don't know how to measure that, like non-response error or some other things. One of the things we do know is that some individuals are more likely to respond to a survey than others. For example, younger people are less likely to respond than older people. So we do a statistical adjustment that we call weighting. And what that means is we would give more weight to the responses we get from younger respondents and less weight to those from older respondents. And we do that so that the demographic profile of respondents matches that demographic profile of the community. And the theory here is that those younger people who did respond are more like the younger people who didn't respond than those older respondents who responded would be. And weighting is just a survey research best practice and helps to improve the representativeness of the survey results. Kelly touched on this a little bit, but we did provide comparisons of the survey responses by demographic and geographic subgroup comparisons. We also have trends over time. In addition, we have a benchmarking database. National Research Center was the first organization to kind of come up with this idea to create a database of benchmarks of public opinion. This allows jurisdictions to compare ratings of services to ratings of similar services from other communities. We find that services like library and fire tend to get higher ratings, while street repair tends to get lower ratings in every community. So it makes more sense to compare street repair to street repair than, kind of pitting library against streets. So for Littleton, we provided benchmark comparisons, using all the communities for whom we have survey responses, and then also to those that are from communities along the Front Range. So we have two sets of comparisons. So now I'm finally going to dive in and provide you information about the survey responses. We did ask a lot of questions of the community. As Kelly already mentioned, the paper version of the survey was about 5.5 pages. So I want to reassure you that while I'm going to present a lot of data this evening, I'm not going to recite every survey statistic. Instead, we've organized the results for this presentation into some key findings. And I want to note that these are things that stood out to us. There is a lot of additional information in that full report that I won't cover this evening, but we hope your staff will dive deeper into this information as you consider the issues facing your community. So our first key finding is that Littleton residents continue to rate the quality of life positively, with the community's location and the parks among the top reasons residents live in Littleton. About 9 in 10 survey respondents gave high marks for the overall quality of life in Littleton, and that's a rating that's remained fairly stable over the past 12 years. Additionally, the city is a place to live and as a place to raise children, as well as respondents' ratings of their neighborhoods received high evaluations, with again about 9 in 10 residents giving excellent or good ratings to each. As in 2022, the most cited reason for living in Littleton was its location, with 79% of respondents checking that box when they were asked why they live in Littleton. This was kind of you see, we say here, it's a multiple response question. It means we presented them with a list of reasons and they could check the ones that applied. The second most frequently cited reason was parks, recreation, and open space. That was considered a reason to live here by about 7 in 10 respondents. In general, the rank order of the percent of respondents selecting these response options for living in Littleton has remained stable over time. We didn't show the data here. However, the proportion who chose the options, I like the school my children attend, or the cost of living is affordable, is lower in 2024 than it was in some of the previous years. Our second key finding is that residents reported satisfaction with city services, but we note items related to traffic are opportunities for improvement. Over 4 in 5 residents felt the overall quality of services in Littleton was excellent or good. This was a slight increase since 2022, although it's still maybe a little bit lower than ratings from the early 2010s. Survey participants were asked to rate the quality of a number of city services and community characteristics. And here you can see a majority of respondents gave favorable ratings to most of these items, with about 9 in 10 giving excellent or good marks to various cultural and outdoor facilities. So you can kind of see on this slide, we've got it in order of the percent rating excellent or good. And many of those things that are on that left-hand side are related to those kinds of facilities. However, there were 3 items to which fewer than half of respondents gave an excellent or good rating. These included job opportunities, traffic flow, and downtown parking. These are these ones kind of here at the bottom. Oh, and I highlighted them again here. In addition to rating the quality of the 23 items I just displayed, survey participants were asked how important each of these was to them. So each of these items was then sort of categorized as being of higher or lower in quality, and then being of higher or lower importance. And we just kind of took the midpoint of the ratings for each of those. And we created this sort of 2x2 matrix. So quality is shown up and down and importance left to right. Items that were rated relatively higher importance and lower in quality represent potential priority areas for improvement. So that would be down here in this quadrant. In 2024, these included traffic enforcement, traffic flow, economic development, environmental sustainability, snow plowing, and the Littleton Police Department. Those completing the survey were asked to rate various aspects of transportation in Littleton. Ease of traveling by bus received the lowest ratings among these items, but in general, ratings were fairly positive. Here you can see the various aspects of transportation and travel evaluated by residents. In 2024, light rail continued to receive positive ratings from residents, with about 7 in 10 giving excellent or good ratings to the downtown Littleton and the Mineral Avenue light rail stations. About 6 in 10 residents gave excellent or good ratings to the ease of travel by light rail, a rating that was much higher than the national and Front Range benchmarks, and that's what this little icon means there. However, again, as I mentioned, the ease of traveling by bus was viewed less favorably by residents, with only about 3 in 10 giving positive ratings. Most transportation ratings remained the same or decreased in 2024 compared to 2022. However, the ratings of the omnibus, shopping cart, senior, and disabled van service did increase from 2022 to 2024. That's this one right here. For our next key finding, we observed that residents continue to feel that Littleton is a safe community. And in fact, several police-related ratings increased from 2022 to 2024. I'll start with the safety ratings, which you can see remained stable in 2024 compared to 2022. About 9 in 10 felt safe in various locations within Littleton during the day or in the parks, trails, and natural open spaces areas. 8 in 10 or more felt safe in Littleton at night. And you can see here that there were 2 items that received ratings higher than the national benchmark comparison. And those were for safety in Littleton during the day and in downtown Littleton at night. Littleton's safety ratings during the day were also higher than the Front Range benchmark comparisons. About 1/3 of those completing the survey reported that they had had contact with the Littleton Police Department at least once in the previous 12 months. Those who had been in contact with the police department were asked to evaluate their interaction, and they gave mostly positive reviews, and several ratings increased in 2024 compared to 2022. These included the fairness of the employee they interacted with, the timeliness of handling the situation, and use of force in a fair and effective way. The 2024 questionnaire included some new questions to assess the level of engagement of the community with arts and cultural related activities. About 1/4 of residents reported having never engaged in arts or cultural related activities in Littleton in the last 12 months, meaning about 3/4 had done so at least once. And actually about 1/3 reported having done so 3 or more times in the last 12 months. Respondents were asked what, if anything, prevented them from attending or participating in more arts and culture activities in Littleton. And the top barrier cited was a lack of information. 56% of respondents ticked that box, and that was followed by a lack of time. Only about 1/4 of residents said that the reason they weren't attending more was a lack of interest. I will note here that the survey did ask a question about sources of information used by residents when looking for information about the city of Littleton. And those responses, which I'm not presenting this evening because I didn't want to talk about everything, may help those who want to address this item. Survey respondents were asked about their likelihood of attending various cultural activities if offered by the city. About 8 in 10 respondents said they would be very or somewhat likely to attend live music events or concerts, while about 7 in 10 indicated they would be very or somewhat likely to attend cultural festivals, art shows or exhibits, or theater performances. About 6 in 10 said they would be at least somewhat likely to attend comedy or stand-up performances, historical or cultural lectures, or film screenings. And then there was a little bit lower interest in literary events or readings, but still about 4 in 10 would be interested in doing that. And about 3 in 10 were interested in live dance events. And then the last key finding I want to present is related to government performance. In 2024, when asked to what extent they believed that city council decisions represent the best interest of citizens, about 7 in 10 responded that it was to a great or moderate extent. And this represents an increase compared to 2022, when there had been kind of a dip in this trend line. We're maybe not quite back to where we were before, although the rating is the same as in 2018. Survey participants evaluated 16 other aspects of city government performance. Nearly all items were given a positive rating by a majority of residents. Particularly positive ratings were given to the direction of open space, trails, and parks. That was considered excellent or good by over 8 in 10 residents. The work provided by the City of Littleton employees was appreciated by residents, with 3/4 giving positive evaluations. The overall direction that city government is taking was deemed excellent or good by about 2/3 of residents, and that rating was higher than the front range benchmark comparison and the national benchmark comparison. Just the front range benchmark comparison. The job that the city government does welcoming citizen involvement was given positive ratings by nearly 7 in 10 residents, and that rating was higher than the national and the front range benchmark comparisons. There were only 2 items that were deemed excellent or good by fewer than 50% of residents, and it was very little less than a majority. That would be these 2 items here, consideration of what people like me think and responding to citizen complaints and concerns. And I just want to say that I've seen many local government surveys and resident ratings of government performance, and it is true that, a lot of these ratings, just in general, they're lower than kind of ratings what you see for other things, like, for example, the work provided by the City of Littleton employees. And while we didn't have benchmark comparisons for all of these, I'm just going to mention this one about spending local tax dollars wisely, where we had about half giving a positive rating. We do have an item in our benchmark database that is the value of services provided for the taxes paid. And I think Nicholas just didn't think that item was similar enough for a comparison, but I kind of think it is. And actually the benchmark comparison, that average across the country, is almost identical to your rating here. So some of these here that are on, this right side of the slide, these are nevertheless actually still fairly positive ratings. And then the last thing I wanted to note about this is that, the little numbers that are kind of to the left of those bars represent the increase in the proportion of residents rating these items positively. And I've placed some green arrows next to those items where the percent of residents giving a positive rating increased by 5 or more percentage points. And I'll just note in particular, some impressive gains were made in providing information about city plans and programs. That was a 13 percentage point increase. And also for attracting companies to locate in Littleton, we had a 12 percentage point increase there. So I'm just going to end with another quick overview of the survey results. There were 30 survey items for which residents provided evaluative ratings that could be compared to the national data. And so just to kind of summarize those comparisons, 5 items received ratings that were higher than the national benchmark. I think I've kind of highlighted those. And 20 received similar ratings, and none received lower ratings. And I'm sorry, I said 30, and that should be 25. My math isn't working. Kelly had mentioned, a couple places where you could find some of the things she found interesting. These like detailed benchmark results can be found starting on page 147 of the report. Let's see, yeah. So then for front range survey responses, we had 28 survey items that could be compared, and 8 received higher ratings and 20 received similar ratings. And then of the 109 evaluative ratings for which there were comparisons from 2022 to 2024, 17 ratings increased in 24, 85 stayed about the same, and 7 received lower ratings. And I'm sure you're going to be curious about those. So the items that received lower ratings in 2024 were ease of traveling by bus, ease of traveling by bicycle, ease of traveling by light rail, the Mineral Avenue Light Rail Station, the downtown Littleton Light Rail Station, traffic enforcement, and code compliance. And some of these issues related to transportation, in the pandemic, I think it was easier to travel, and now it's a little less so. And so that could account for some of that change we've seen. So this has been a summary of the key findings from that report of survey results. And as we've mentioned, there's a lot more information, including detailed responses for every survey question. And for some of those questions, breakdowns of results by those respondent characteristics. We do hope that you and our city staff will dive deeper into data relevant to your mission or to plans that you're making, so that you can help to continue to make Littleton a great place to live, work, and play, and responsive to what your residents want. And so at this time, I can try to answer any of your questions.
Letting us know that one of the issues is it's the ceiling mic,
Right.
and that's what's causing kind of the feedback issues. So she may try to mute and unmute to get questions out and answers.
You can hear us, Erin? Okay, now we can't hear you.
But she's
That's right, she's gonna let us
gonna
talk and then mute us and let her talk, basically.
We may need to, do like email Q&A stuff like that if, I don't know how this will work, but she'll be able to hear.
Yeah.
And then we'll take her off mute and she'll
Yeah,
respond.
it'll go fine.
Yeah, as soon as one of you asks a question, I'll mute that, bring your audio up.
Yeah.
I had one question,
So we'll start with
the noob.
Andrea.
Maybe you guys already talked about this, but why is this the only survey that we mail out as opposed to just having it be something people could scan and do? Cause 10% seems low. Would we not have gotten more feedback if it was just like open to everybody?
Okay, so can you hear me now? I think you can. I can't actually see you. One of the reasons we've gone to the online only, we still would give you the option to send out paper copy surveys, but so many people now do have internet access that we have started going to that form of delivering the survey. And, response rates are falling to all surveys, regardless of how we do them. And so even with a hard copy survey, we're still finding response rates are falling. And so that cost per completed survey is increasing. And so that's why we're kind of going to this push to web if a city is open to trying that method and having people complete it that way. So 10% is actually not a bad response rate to this form of doing a survey. I actually just attended a conference of the American Association of Public Opinion Research back in May. And, so many companies, or I should say companies, but survey researchers are, finding this decrease in response rates and trying methods like these to make it reasonable to do these kind of random sample surveys.
Share with Councilmember Peters why it isn't open to every single resident, why it's open only to a select number of random households?
So we have actually done a lot of work with this. In a number of communities, we have people or, the local governments do our random sample survey and also do an open participation survey. But there's just something very different because that outreach is done by the city. I think we tend to get people who are already interacting with the city, and they are different in some ways from the general population. So overall, we tend to find they have that respondents to that open participation survey that's open to everyone, they tend to have more negative ratings on average than sort of that probability sample survey. So even though those response rates are falling, we still believe, and most survey researchers also believe, that those responses are more representative of the community, and it is important to make that attempt to do that random selection of invitations to your population.
Is to have the scientifically valid, statistically valid survey, because, we could do the open participation survey, but we wouldn't really have the same confidence that we do with the methods that the researchers use in terms of reliability for how our overall community might feel about a certain
We only did a
issue.
survey for people who showed up at council meetings.
Yeah.
I have a question. On slide 24, can she hear me?
Yeah, she can hear us.
Okay, on slide 24, you were talking about the lowest ratings for consideration of what people like me think and responding to the citizen complaints, and you were talking about the comparison of that to other communities, and you cut out. So can you finish that thought? I mean, are
Yours are right in line.
Steve, I know you have a question.
I have actually a lot of compliments, like, I know, because compared to where, like, the sampling, the respondent rates in terms of both racial demographic, age demographic, income distribution, feel way better than I've seen them in, like, than the last one. And I'm not trying to denigrate the work you've done in the past, but this feels like a huge improvement, like, in terms of methodology and respondents. So first off, I just wanna, like, pay you the compliment, because I know this is something I was really passionate about last go around, and I feel really, really excited that I feel much more confident in this data. Being a true representation. The Hispanic speaking population matches almost exactly up with our census tract numbers. Family sizes line up almost with our census tract numbers. It's pretty darn close. One of my questions to you, ma'am, would be with regards to income levels in terms of respondents. I'm very curious as to where the respondents versus our city kind of fit with regards to like income distribution. Do you feel like we got a fair representation across AMIs, or I know that's super specific, and if you don't have it in front of you at the moment, that's fine. I'm just trying to have some sort of relative understanding of income.
If you can hear me now, that is a very good question. I don't have the answer to that. We tend not to wait on that variable because we find that a lot of people don't want to answer that question. And so it's not a very good weighting variable because, like 20% of people don't even answer it. So we can't use it to kind of adjust. And so that makes it a little harder to say for sure, what that income distribution is. However, that doesn't mean I can't compare the income distribution, from the survey respondents to the census. I just don't have that in front of me. So that's going to be one where we get back to you with that. I've made a note.
it's way better.
Well said.
And I have some comments too, if you wanna hear what I
Sure.
thought was interesting.
I do.
Just to let you know, we added those cultural arts questions at the request of the Arts and Culture Commission. And I am always reluctant to add anything without taking anything out because the survey is long as is, it's 6 pages. 2 pages are for the police department. For those of you who don't know, as part of LPD's CALIA accreditation, they're required to do surveys. So this, the law enforcement questions are very important to police. But we did have the ability to take some questions out because we weren't asking about a lodger's tax anymore, and we weren't asking about a sales tax, and we weren't asking about bonding. So that's why those cultural art questions were in there at their request. Just patting my staff on the back, city special events, as far as quality of services, was 88% for quality. That's on page 15, and that's up from 80% in 2022, so I think that's cool. And just a reminder, the most pressing issues on page 12 are affordable housing, homelessness, and traffic, and those did go up considerably from prior surveys. The Littleton report on page 35 is at an all-time high of 83% of people get their information about the city from the Littleton report. Another,
Twice as many as next door, which is good.
Well, I was getting to next door, Villager and X all went down in the ratings of people using them to get information about the city, which is not a bad thing. Just one thing I thought was really interesting, the Visit Littleton website was built pretty much 2.5 years ago, and we didn't do much to market that. And with the lodger's tax proceeds, we were able to do the Visit Littleton marketing campaign, which coincidentally started about the same time as the data collection for this. And the number of people that say they visited that website went up from 31% to 51%. So that tells me that that marketing campaign really had an impact. And then just lastly, with a marijuana tax increase on the horizon, it's on page 34. That was at 83% support or strongly support, and that's up 1 percentage point from 2022. And that's all I had.
I was gonna compliment the fact that all the communications methodologies that people were receiving information about the city were primarily in like city kind of control. It wasn't necessarily social media, it was the report, it was the Independent, it was city website, Visit Littleton, like far and away, you know, leading the pack in terms of information and communication.
Yeah, interestingly, the Denver Post is practically non-existent, you know. They used to cover the suburbs
Shocked.
more.
The what?
They don't anymore. What'd you
You
say?
mean the
I said, what's that?
Sorry.
Denver Post?
Well, and I noticed that the police became less of an issue, and I don't know if that in 2022, I don't know if it was the mood of the nation. Maybe that was part of it, or maybe there's some things that have been done. But like it was a big issue and now it, you know, went down to like 29% or something. And I was,
That's, she can answer that question based on the comparisons.
even though it was in the lower quadrant for low quality.
It was in the lower quadrant. I'm gonna have to, it was in that lower quadrant, and I was gonna mention, you know, it's also relative, that matrix is relative to other things. And so it did look like in those ratings I presented about safety and interactions with police, that things have remained stable or gotten better. So it may be that even though it's in that lower quadrant, it may not be the thing you want to focus on. There's like 5 or 6 things there. And I'm just going to do a really quick look for the trend of that one over time.
Of progress in sharing information, both good and bad, about things going on in the department. So I think, you know, that's only going to continue to get better, I think.
Well, and crime reduction became less of an issue, you know, I mean, it really kind of dropped, which was good.
So my comment is not about the survey, but about the results of the survey. So during our budget session, we had a conversation with the chief about kind of the prioritization of traffic enforcement. And what I heard from the chief is traffic enforcement is kind of a second priority. It's an overtime activity. And yet this survey suggests that traffic enforcement is a problem. And I wonder if it's appropriate for us to have a conversation about prioritization of police services. I think in general, they're obviously doing very well and people feel very safe, and that's really important. But I wonder if we need to start talking about how we reprioritize traffic enforcement as an issue, because, and I don't think traffic enforcement and traffic flow are the same thing, but I would like to hear about that. So can we, as a group, consider whether we want to have that conversation in the future?
I'd be up for that. And if you look at the results on page 64, whatever, a lot has to do with traffic and speeding and drag racing and all that stuff. And that's what I've been advocating for. So well said. I'm glad, I agree. I think we should have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I mean, the chief currently, and I'm sure it's with the blessing of the council, has placed that as a second priority. And maybe we could have a conversation.
Another one I noticed from the lower quadrant was snow removal. Remember, we set it at a certain level and it's fine, but people get so fussy when they can't get out of their houses because of snow removal, but we can only afford certain amount. And I was thinking of looking at that as something that we may have to up the ante on. I don't know. I know it's expensive. It's hard to do, but
I would imagine snow removal is every community's one of the main
And,
things.
you know,
But
a lot
again,
of,
that's another one of the benchmarks. Do you have a benchmark on snow removal?
It'd be really different.
On the front range though.
And hang on, there's a lot of mentions of snow removal in the open end, so I just have to find the right place. There should be a benchmark comparison. I'm not finding it right now. I will get back to you, but I did want to get back to you about the Littleton Police Department ratings. Those were identical in 2024 as 2022. And I just want to emphasize this again about one of the reasons, with that graph, the way we kind of do that 2x2 matrix, it is relative to the other ratings. And so I would encourage you to also look at those benchmark ratings, because it may be some of those things like snow removal, which had a 53% approval rating, is actually similar to the benchmark and therefore may not be the area on which you want to focus. So I've given you the Littleton Police Department. Continue talking. I'm going to look up snow removal.
when they asked for the most pressing issues, the one on 12, it was crime reduction went from 29% to 18%. I mean, it went, it became less of an issue.
Mhm.
And I mean, other ones rose to the top, but it just, put that in line with some of the other things, the other questions that were answered, just seems like things are getting better in that area.
To Councilmember Reichardt's point, just to remind or refresh council memory, the traffic enforcement piece was another component of the chief's proposal for a proactive safety for this current year's budget. And as we talked about how best to, we ended up prioritizing homelessness policy support and the reinforcement of our patrol divisions and the connections with neighborhoods first, because that would free up, once we're staffed up for patrol, that will free up the current traffic enforcement officers that we have. We have 2. They're often pulled back into patrol. So I think this is ripe, especially depending on the outcome of the ballot measure. I imagine we can come right back into that discussion if that's council's interest.
Well, and I want to thank you. I want to clarify. I know the chief requested a lot more slots for traffic enforcement than he got in the budget last year. It's when I say second priority, I'm really talking about how traffic enforcement, our current traffic enforcement, is used to fill patrol versus the other way around. Patrol is used to fill traffic enforcement. And so that's what I mean by a second
Yeah,
priority.
yeah.
So, but thank you for that clarification.
And Erin, did you have something more on snow removal?
I do. I am not finding a benchmark comparison for that, but I know that we can provide one. So I'm going to go back and make sure we do that for you, and we'll get that back to you. So Kelly, I heard you have 72 hours left. If we're able to get that in the next day or two, do we send it to you or should we send these to someone else?
Kelly will make sure that you have the contact for the rest of the.
Yes, I'll make sure Kathy Weaver is looped in.
Any other?
Yeah, because that, I think that's important, because if we're benchmarking 52% is normal, maybe we don't need to.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, hey, good point, good point.
Maybe we could have a year with no snow and it would probably still be at 52%.
Yep.
And it depends, if you're in a cul-de-sac, you're always irritated because you don't get plowed until the third round.
I mean, some of these things like crime reduction and perceptions of crime and actual crime are also like, can be drastically different based on.
Are drastically different.
They are drastically different all
Well,
the
it's
time.
the same with downtown parking.
Right.
The
Parking.
perception of a parking problem is different than the reality.
Exactly, so.
We need more public parking signs.
Or we can put snow.
I know I like to finish up, but I do want to thank Kelly, and I think it's.
This is huge.
Yeah, this is
Miss
great.
you.
It's fitting that your last presentation is about, you know, what Littleton residents think about services, because for the last 33 years, I don't know that there's anyone who's been closer to the community and what, you know, people think about the city over those years. So that's just a kind of thumbnail of all that you've, you know, contributed to our community and the city organization, but thank you for your work.
I appreciate that, thank you.
I just want to thank Kelly too for being with the city for so long and being a big part of our community and everything. So thank you for all the work. You will be missed. And it was great having you as part of our team. So I just want to give you a standing ovation. So.
Are you picking up all the red on the camera?
I just want to say I am grateful for the opportunities that I've been given here. I had the opportunity to work on so many cool things that I probably was not qualified to work on, like the courthouse.
Welcome
and
to the
light
club,
rail.
Kelly. Welcome to the club.
But to be given those opportunities to work on such cool things, you know, it means the world to me. So thank you to all of you for your support, and that's it. We're gonna stop now.
Littleton's a better place because of you.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Good luck on your next chapter.
Thank
Have fun in
you.
Europe.
Europe and Maverick
And your grandson.
and golf.
Any manager report? Attorney?
So, Kelly.
All right.
Good answer.
We're adjourned.
Debate, right?
Are we done?
Yep, we're.